Sometimes it takes the words of one person, the action and the dogged determination of one person to bring out and to get into the public arena something that 1,000 couldn't have done. And that, I think, is evident in the case of prisoner 650. But sometimes it requires everybody. We have in Islam a concept of Fard Ain and Fard Kifaya. Fard Ain, everybody knows what that is, that if you don't do it as an individual, you are sinful. And Fard Kifaya is that if some people do it, it absolves the rest of the sin. But Kifaya means that there are enough. And are there enough people from all of the communities here? And I have to say it again and again, that it's the non-Muslim community that they are the ones that are helping to cause or to fulfill this Kifaya, because they're the ones that are doing it. There's sufficient numbers of them doing it, but there's not sufficient numbers of us doing it. The only thing is they're not subjected to the same laws and regulations as we are. And we're supposed to be accountable. And we're not doing enough. And part of that not doing enough means going to your communities. Everybody here is linked, or a great number of people here are linked by extension to Pakistan in one way or another. This shouldn't be an issue in Pakistan. This should be one of the most important issues in Pakistan. People should not be made, or they should not be able to forget about the case of Aafia. Because if this is true, if it's true that Aafia was held for 5 years in secret detention and was tortured, and amongst those things that happened is that one of her children died, as has been reported in one of the Pakistani papers, while she was in custody, that her own child was detained, and you can see one of the interviews or the interrogations on the Cageprisoners website, where her child is present, and he's crying, and she's trying to shield him from the interrogators. Then what have we done about it? What has the Pakistani community done about it? There is a huge emphasis and a huge reason now. Muslims constitute a great number of people in this country, 3 million, 2 million, I don't know exactly what, but the majority of them are from Pakistan. And it's now time for people from the community of the Pakistani Muslims to stand up and make their voices heard in the press, in the media, in the public, outside the embassies, in Pakistan, on the streets, wherever it is, it doesn't matter. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you and us to account. We talk often about the case of the woman at the time of Al-Mu'tasim, who shouted out, who was captured by a Roman army. She said, "Wa Mu'tasima." It's very famous. And because of what happened to this one woman, the abuse that happened to this one woman, Al-Mu'tasim, whose aqeedah was confused, to say the least, who wasn't even, according to some scholars, a rightly guided Muslim. But he sent out his whole force just to rescue her, because it was about honor and dignity and righteousness and justice. And our impotent response is lamentable, it's shameful, particularly because we all so much talk about our link with the homeland, our link with Pakistan, whatever it is. We continue to speak in the language of Pakistan and Urdu and Punjabi and talk about it in terms of such love. And yet Pakistan is a country, I know because I was there at the time, in Afghanistan, when the planes flew over Pakistan territory from Pakistani land, the B-52 bombers and the F-16s and the tank busters and the drone aircraft and the Hellfire rockets that landed in Kabul and destroyed hundreds and hundreds of houses, and thousands of people's lives were taken because they were cheap and they came from Pakistan. And when we see what happens in the northwest, in Waziristan and that region over there, these are people who live in their own land. They're not invading other countries. But who's coming to bomb them day in and day out? Either the Americans directly or the Pakistanis, killing their own people. Killing their own people. And what do the Pakistanis do? At best, nothing. At best, nothing. So this, brothers and sisters, is an extremely important issue. Sister Yvonne, inshallah, will be explaining to you how her campaign reached the very doors of the White House and the Pentagon and the US Department of Justice, or Injustice, and how the Pakistani reaction, how there are some people in Pakistan who stood with her and called openly for Dr. Aafia's release and return. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that quick and soon and easy for her, inshallah. Just one announcement I'd like to make, inshallah, is the case of a brother called Binyam Muhammad al-Habashi, who is somebody who used to live here. He used to live in the Ladbroke Grove area of London. He's somebody that's known in his community, and he's somebody who has suffered greatly, primarily again at the hands of the good old Pakistanis, who handed him over to the Americans, who then proceeded to hand him over to the Moroccans, where he was tortured, where a razor blade was taken to his chest and then to his genitalia, and then he was sent ultimately to Guantanamo Bay, which was his final destination, where he remains to this day after 6 years. I urge you to sign a petition that has been made by the London Guantanamo campaign, who are campaigning for his release and return to the United Kingdom. It's really important that you recognize this. I was the first person, along with another British brother, to be designated for trial by military commission in Guantanamo. That means we were going to be put in front of a military court. We were going to be the next best thing to the Nazis. After the Nuremberg trials in 1945, after the Second World War, after the trials of Goering and Rudolf Hess and Hitler's henchmen, we were going to be the next best thing, according to the US military. I was eventually released because people in the British government eventually said that this is not something we can accept. But Binyam is charged under the military commissions process. And that is a kangaroo court, where you don't have evidence that you can see, where you can't call witnesses, where there is a 3-panel judge, jury and prosecution in front of you who will determine your fate, where a guilty verdict can result in an execution, where there is no right of appeal, where the system is just as bad as you get in some of the third world despotic Arab regimes, in fact worse, because at least those countries don't claim to be the bastions of justice and freedom. Binyam is somebody from this country, and he requires our support. And the organizations that are campaigning for him should be supported from the Muslim community. So I urge you, inshallah, after the talks, or when there is time, to come to the back, where the stalls are, brothers and sisters, to sign the petition, to make sure that this brother is not forgotten from amongst our community. وجزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.